Hello everybody, we'll call the meeting to order. Do we have any declarations of interest? Seeing none, we'll move on. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation and the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas and Georgina Island First Nation. At this point in time, I will ask that we stand for O Canada, and I believe we're going to have it, it's going to be recorded. So. So we'll then move on to adoption of agenda. 6A, approved minutes of the regular board meeting of November 18th, 2019. Could I have someone move that? Trustee Barnes, Trustee Templeton, all in favor? Carried. And the draft minutes of the regular board meeting December 2nd, 2019. Do you have somebody move that?
No, there's some problems.
There's some. Are there?
Carolyn.
No. Go ahead, Trustee Morton. There you go. Are you on there, Carolyn? Here you go. Good?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would move that, but there are two small inaccuracies. The first one is found on page 19 or page 5. It says Trustee Christine Thatcher was acclaimed to the position of Chair of Education Finance. That should read Trustee Darlene Forbes is the Chair of Finance. The second mistake is on the bottom of page 9 or 23 at the top. It says Trustees Nikki Lundquist and Ashley Noble accepted the nomination for Sal. I think that's an inaccuracy as well. So with those two adjustments, I would move to adopt.
Thank you.
So should we say what it says? It's supposed to say Carolyn Morton.
Yeah, so can we say what it says then? Why don't you put that forward, Trustee Lundquist?
So can we amend the minutes then to reflect that it was Carolyn Morton that actually accepted the Sal position?
I would appreciate that.
Thank you.
So someone move that with the amended minutes? Trustee Noble, Trustee Barnes, all in favor? Great. So we move to number 7, item 7. So this is my story. Tonight's episode of And This Is My Story is focused on mental health and well-being. Well-being is foundational to both our students' school success and our DDSB staff success in all of our employee groups. Ensuring our schools and places of work are inclusive and focused. our well-being is of critical importance to the DDSB and is one of our core Ignite learning priorities. This commitment has been established in our well-being operational goal, which is to create safe, welcoming, inclusive learning spaces to promote well-being for all our students and staff. We have developed a well-being and mental health strategic plan, and we are collecting data so we can continue to be responsive and improve our programs and supports to our commitment. Our schools have begun to implement a phenomenal strategy called 20 Days of Wellbeing, which has been highly successful and goes well beyond 20 days, but focuses on our model, well-being, everyone and every day. Tonight, and this is my story, shares one of our teachers' story about experiencing trauma, anxiety, and depression. But tonight's episode also demonstrates the power of education, compassion, support, and empathy. Everyone's well-being matters, and supporting our students and staff in their well-being will continue to be a priority in the DDSB. Tonight, Stephanie Robertson, a teacher at Vincent Massey Public School, shares her story, and we applaud and thank her for sharing the importance of well-being and mental health.
I know teachers would definitely say, we have multiple roles in our jobs, and yeah, we do. It's not just the academics, it's not just the mental health, it's the whole picture. So we play a huge part in helping kids to be successful and to feel good. A big part of who I am is I'm a twin. I'm an identical twin. My sister is probably the closest person to me, friend-wise, to this day. My sister and I were born in the U.S. because my dad played hockey on a scholarship there. So I came to Canada when I was very young. We grew up in just a regular family, 4 kids. My dad was a school teacher and then a principal. Through my life, I've always had this sidekick beside me. I've always had this best friend who really was with me day and night. We did all the things that twins do and thoroughly enjoyed it. We were together through university. We were together through high school. Not many people can say, do you remember when? And about anything in my life, she was there. I can't explain how unique it is, because unless you're a twin, you would never really understand. When I was young, probably about 8 years old, my twin and I were playing, and it was after school, and I was chasing her, and she ran across the road, and she was hit by a fast-moving car. And she was really injured. She was unconscious, and she ended up bleeding a lot, and she was taken away in an ambulance. And it was a trauma. It was very traumatic. And again, knowing kids, they would, they were saying things like she had died on the way, and stuff like that. And so it was difficult, obviously, at the event. She ended up being okay, thank goodness. But what I didn't know, and neither did my parents, was that after the trauma, it actually stayed with me for many years, and I didn't know. And it was through school that I would have panic attacks, and I didn't know what they were. My parents would take me to the doctor, and physically I was fine. And I kind of lived with the panic attacks for several years, through my high school years. And I do have to say that I had wonderful teachers. They probably didn't know either really what was going on, but just the fact that they were super compassionate helped me through that time. So then I ended up going to university, had panic attacks all through university. Surprised I made it. And then I ended up working at John Howard Society, and because I was working in the jail and it was confined and I was working with inmates, that's when the panic attacks became really bad, and I knew I needed help. So I ended up going to the doctor, a psychiatrist, and I worked with him for a number of sessions, and we figured out that I did have PTSD. Never dreamed that it would be about my sister. So it ended up being a combination of both depression and PTSD. And through my counseling and through medication, I, worked through it. And for the last 20 years, I just feel like I am in such a better place for a number of reasons, through the help of my psychiatrist, through the help of teachers who were there, super supportive, my mom, and through just support of my colleagues. I feel I'm in a really good place now. Teachers play a huge part in understanding why kids aren't learning, why they're misbehaving. I've had several students who, through the years, have avoided class, and it's so important that we have compassion and empathy for kids who have experienced trauma or mental health issues. To teachers, it's okay to talk about personal experiences if it's going to help students. Sometimes it's a really uncomfortable subject for kids to talk about. So I do think that we have to become more comfortable talking about it and, taking away the stigma from it. And I think it's fantastic that the board is running workshops where mental health is addressed. I think it's important that teachers take some time to explore themselves, but also attend the workshops that the Durham Board offers. They address the problems that students are having today, and that's really important. I'm Stephanie Robertson. I'm a grade 8 teacher at Vincent Massey Public School, and this is my story.
At this time, too, I'd like to people in the gallery, people watching online, and just in general that have been here for about 15, 20 minutes after the 7 o'clock, just want to apologize that we did have a couple of pressing items that we had to deal with in camera, and we appreciate your time waiting for us and sitting down while we were finished that. On that note, too, I also wanted to say at the beginning, too, that we do have regrets this evening from Trustee Michael Barrett, Trustee Thatcher, our student trustees Arlene Wang and Tyler West, and also wanted to say that you may be leaving a bit earlier, too, just because exams are on, so we completely understand, and feel free to leave whenever you need to. On that topic, too, I just wanted to add recommended actions, 14H. I'm going to add an item that says Maple Ridge Boundary Review, and Trustee Crawford will bring that forward. And if I could have someone just move that addition to the agenda. Trustee Templeton, Trustee Crawford, all in favor? Perfect. Seeing no community presentations this evening, we have no ministry memorandums, no one's for public question period and presentation, so we move to student census findings. Identity Superintendent Hamid.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Boehner, the report can be found on page 28 of your package.
Okay.
We are thrilled today to be able to share with trustees the initial findings of the student census survey that we conducted at the district in spring of last year. As we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the team that is here that was part of the student census project. So I'd like to acknowledge Jackie Steer, who is our executive coordinator of equity, Jonelle Mitchell, who's our research assistant in the back there, in the front, she moved, and Chris Conley, as well, who's our manager of our accountability, assessment and accountability department. So the team is here, and I want to thank the team for coming and being part of this presentation today. So why are we engaged in the student census? And that's a very important question for us when we ask ourselves why. And it comes right out of the language of our Ignite Learning strategy, where we talk about the notion of promoting a sense of belonging and increasing equitable outcomes for all by identifying and addressing barriers to success and engagement. And we do that through ensuring that we are understanding student safety through the protected grounds of the Ontario Human Rights Codes, the 17 protected grounds, and you'll see them there. We also do this through the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as well. So those are foundational documents that drive what we are doing. As a superintendent team, we've made a commitment to work together to understand who the students are of Durham. And you'll see in our Ignite Learning strategy and in a lot of our strategic priority language, you'll see this notion of the term we. And we is a commitment that we as a superintendent team talk about how we are working together to understand and support the you. And you see you throughout our language there. And the you speaks to our students and who our students are. So that's a very, very important signal that we are making public. And this is, you've seen this in many of the presentations that we do, because the part of the purpose really of the student census is for us to understand who it is that we are serving in our schools. Because we have all of this language, but we needed to get deeper into an understanding of who is in Durham. And today we're going to take you through some of the findings of our census. Trustees will find in their package some technical language that speaks to the background foundational aspects of the census, from the consultation and development all the way through to the administration. So as trustees are going through that, if they have any questions about the technicalities, we will have an opportunity to answer questions about that as well. For now, we are going to go through the census very quickly and share the results. So across the district, we saw a response of about 37% of our K-12 students replying. We had about a 30% response rate in K-6. We had about a 46% response rate in our 7-12, which is in line with our climate survey, and it's also in line with our workforce census. And so we are hoping that through the work that we are doing coming out of the census, that as we start to build trust and confidence in our communities, we are going to start to see this response rate increase the next time we administer the census, which should be not this year, but in the following year. We're going to take you through question by question now. Trustees will find in their package a detailed examination of each of the questions as well. What you see on each of the slides is you see the two questions that were asked. The top question is the question that was asked in the K-6 census. The bottom question is the question that was asked in the 7-12 census. So you can see the difference there amongst the questions. We see that 3% of our community in Durham identifies as being Indigenous. From that 3%, we've broken it down so that we see those that identify as First Nation, those that identify as Métis, and those that identify as Inuit as well. The second question is about ethnic origin, and you will see that we offered opportunity for self-identification through a number of ethnic shared ethnic origins. So you'll see that there is 52% identified as being Canadian. Of that 52%, 32% identified being Canadian along with another ethnic or cultural origin as well. You'll see our top results in that slide as well, the 10 largest responses. The second question was around how individuals identify with racial groups. And you can see that the majority of our students identify as being white, 57%, followed by South Asian, followed by those that identify as being black, followed by Middle Eastern. Moving on, we asked folks to identify religious affiliation. Again, you will see in Durham that we had 33% would identify as being Christian, 24% would identify as not identifying with a religion, and 14% as Muslim as well. The next question we asked was about gender identity. And in the results, you see that we are at about a 49% identify as being boy or man, and 49% identify as girl or woman. We broke apart the gender diverse percentage, and you can see within that how our population identified within the gender diverse spectrum. Continuing on was the next question we had on sexual orientation. This question was just asked for grades 7 to 12 only. you'll see that we had about 85% who identify as being straight, 11% identify as LGBTQ2S, and you can see that we've broken that apart as well to see within that 11% how folks identified. The next question was around whether or not for K to 6 that a parent had a child who would consider themselves to be a person with disability. In grades 7 to 12, whether the child themselves considered themselves to be a person with a disability. And we had 9% of our demographic identify as being, considering themselves someone to be a person with a disability. And you can see how we broke that apart, and you can see within each of those categories how our population identified as well. These would be the categories that are in the ministry classification as well of disability. The next question is about first language learned. And as you can see, trustees, in your package, you will also find a breakdown by municipality, and you can see within your municipality where the breakdowns differ between municipalities. English, not surprisingly, was our first language learned at home, followed by Urdu, French, Tamil, a language that was not listed, and continuing on as well. And so the question is, what are we doing with all of this information? And what we hope that the trustees will see over the next series of board meetings is you will see each of us as superintendents bringing forward initiatives, projects that demonstrate how we have taken this understanding or beginnings of an understanding as to who the students are in our school and how we are using a responsive and relevant process to understand the students better, to design programming with the outcome, because everything we do is in service of student achievement and engagement, to ensure that we have proportional representation as students cross that stage towards graduation, and whatever graduation is for them, ensuring that we are seeing that proportional representation. You'll see all of the 6 priorities listed there, and it signals that this is something that all of us as superintendents are doing together in terms of getting deep, in terms of understanding who we serve and what we are doing as a result of that. That is just a very brief overview of the student census. The team is happy to take any questions that trustees may have at this time.
Thank you, Superintendent Hamid. Any questions or comments from trustees at this point? Seeing none, thank you. We have Trustee Barnes.
I forgot about the button. Thank you very much for the information. I think this is very good. The engagement rate was pretty good for first time around. So as we go forward with this, when do we have to do a census again?
We need to do it within 2 years.
Okay.
And also the ministry has mandated that by 2023, all districts will be doing it as well. So that's something that they've in the process of putting into legislation. But we will be doing it again within the next 2 years.
Thank you. The information is really, some of it is pretty surprising, getting down to the data, but some of it we already knew, and we were kind of started working on that. So thank you for the work, and really intrigued by this and where we take it going from here.
Thank you.
Trustee Forbes.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. I just had a quick question in terms of the disability as students who identify as having a disability, and I was just wondering, because that number compared to the data that we have in terms of our students who access like IEP supports, it's lower. So I'm just wondering, when we have data that, just wondering how we rationalize that.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So we do collect IEP data as a system as well. It's something that Superintendent McCauley's department does. We do have that stream of data as well. This is, again, data that is voluntary and helps us to it's a barometer of trust, really. And so that's the combination of the two is data in and of itself. And that's something that we hope to see as we begin to create those environments that really are centered around the identity of the students, that we start to see some comparables between the two streams of data. Does that sort of answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other further questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Superintendent Hamid. We'll then move on to school results of the school climate well-being surveys. Superintendent Davis.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. This report can be found on pages 65 to 100. The purpose of this report is to share the board-wide results of the 2019-2020 School Climate Wellbeing Surveys to the Board of Trustees for information. The purpose of this anonymous survey is to gain information from the school and school community around the areas of school climate, safety, and well-being. This information informs our strategies for school improvement, bias-aware progressive discipline, success, and equity, and it supports our well-being priority. As Superintendent Hamid spoke about the consensus data, it supports us to respond to the DDSB value statement, "We value who you are." The school climate survey data supports our response to the Durham District School Board value statement, "We value how you feel." I would like to introduce Ken McNaughton, our Education Officer of Safe Schools, and Chris Conley, our Manager of Research, Assessment, and Accountability. They will share more details about the process and the results of the survey with you.
Thank you, Superintendent Davis. Mr. Chair, trustees, Associate Director, we're pleased to be here tonight. We're going to quickly go over a little bit about why we do the survey, how we do the survey, and some of the system results. Of course, the thread tonight has been student well-being, and student well-being is so important to us. Positive school climate, we know, is really fundamental for students to feel included, safe, and have a sense of belonging so they can thrive and achieve. And it's with this in mind that our strategic priorities are put forward, and our core mission of student well-being is at that helm of that positive school climate. And the survey really gets to trying to measure aspects of that positive school climate. Traditionally, the school climate survey has been around since about 2009, and schools are mandated to do it every 2 years, collect anonymous information from their students, staff, and parents around the climate. Traditionally, the survey has been built around bullying prevention and bullying issues and safety, but we've expanded that survey last year. This really is a larger survey than we've ever done before. It's quite robust in that we added a number of questions around well-being, and we incorporated, of course, our student attitudinal survey, which we've done many years before. So it became a rather robust survey. Some of the data is new to us because we've never asked these questions before, and we're very excited about that, and of course we have work to do. I'm going to turn it over to Chris, who's going to talk a little bit more about how the survey was administered and a little bit about the data analysis.
Good evening. The survey was developed in SurveyMonkey and administered online, and we had 3 methods of distribution. School administrators received links to each of the student, staff, and parent surveys that were specific to their schools. Students with Chromebooks received links to their surveys through their bookmarks, and parents received notification about participation in the survey through email and voicemail. Our grade 4 to 8 students participated in the survey, as well as grades 9 to 12, and they were asked to highlight their experiences over the years, over that year. Staff and parents were also invited to participate and to reflect in terms of the experience of the student for the parents and guardians, their students, their perception of their students' experience, and for the staff, their perceptions of experience of students as a whole. Overall, we had 31,000 students participate, we had over 2,000 staff participate, and we had over 8,500 parents participate. The time was set aside in class for students to be able to complete the survey. Staff also had time set aside and made available to them through events such as a staff meeting. And parents were invited, as I mentioned, through email links and voicemail. They were invited to complete the survey on their own devices, or if they would like, they were available to come into the school and complete the survey through the library computers. One survey was completed per child. The data that's being collected is being analyzed at the school level and is being used as part of the Safe and Accepting School Teams for development of the school bullying prevention intervention plan. In addition to having a few questions that were new, we also had a new way of engaging with the data, and we developed a dashboard that would give administrators the opportunity to engage with their data, take a look at summaries at a high level, as well as dig down deeper into some other levels of data.
Thank you, Chris. Prior to the survey, too, we added a number of, there's a photo of the what the dashboard looks like. And I should mention, I'm going a little bit off script here, but Chris and his team worked tirelessly to get this dashboard in the hands to our staff by September. And we did some training with them so they could use the dashboard, help them with their school well-being goals and their bully prevention intervention plans. And then from that point on, we've been working with schools and providing them extra training and support, and it's made the feedback from our staff has been phenomenal. So thanks to Chris and his team for doing that. We provided a lot of resources to support schools too in the administration of the test, or sorry, the survey. We provided tip sheets for all the teachers to get their students ready. We provided a PowerPoint that they could use with their students. It could be used at a staff meeting, could be used at SCC meetings to help explain the survey and what the survey was all about, and also get students ready. And we also have a central file memorandum that's available to all staff to walk them through the steps of getting students ready. And our participation rates, as you can see, 31,000 students were quite high, and we're very impressed at our parent participation as well. I'm going to share a little bit of system data, but as Chris explained, it's really the school level data that's very important. It helps school look at their gaps, their needs, and where they need to focus as a school team in terms of providing a better adjustment to school climate. Any issues that might arise from their survey they can address immediately. But we also are interested in some system trends. In particularly, we asked a number of new questions, and we wanted to see what that came out as from a system level perspective. Of course, the survey is predominantly or started from a safety lens, and we're always interested in student safety and their perception of safety. And once again, we had students feeling quite safe, particularly in their classroom. 95% of the students say they feel very safe in their classrooms. Overall, 86% of our students feel safe at school. We'd like that number to be a little higher, but that is still a substantial number of our students feel very safe in all aspects of school life. And they feel that 88% of the kids feel they're treated with respect at school, which is quite a nice number too, but we'd like that number to be a little bit higher. However, when we get into some of the newer questions we asked, we had a little bit of this new data, so we're still sort of pulling it apart, trying to drill down and figure out what it all means. 73% of our students feel like they belong at school. 71% feel that their culture is well represented in the school. We'd like those numbers to be very higher. And we're working, of course, with the Equity Department, which just did a presentation here, and tying some of the work that we do together to make sure that those things improve in our schools. And the interesting question, which we did a little bit of work on last year, and we had an expert come in, is asking students if they feel like they mattered. And this number was a little bit lower than we anticipated, and it's an area that we have to work on and dig down a little bit deeper. What does that mean? One of the questions that we know we had a low response on, kids feel like they belong for the most part, yet they feel like if they were to miss school, nobody would know that they were missing. So how do we build that connection into individual students and make them feel like, yeah, we care about you, we missed you, welcome back. Those types of things. Traditionally, the survey is was based around bully prevention and bullying data. We collected that data as well, and we can compare it to our past surveys that we've done. We've had a nice little movement in the positive direction around this, but we still have work to do. We know we have work to do, but we're fairly happy with some of the results. Our elementary students, 84% of them said for that school year they feel like they were never bullied, which means 16% of our kids do feel like they're bullied, and that's still a high number, but provincially that number is around 25%, so we're quite happy about that number. And secondary students, only 11%. That's actually higher than the province rate too, feel that they were bullied, and 89% of our students feel that they were never bullied at school last year. We also separate our types of bullying into verbal, social, physical, electronic, sexual. Verbal and social bullying are by far, if students have been bullied, those are the ones that they indicate have happened the most. And if we look at elementary, the next one would be physical, followed by electronic and sexual, and that flips in secondary. We see a higher rate of electronic bullying as opposed to the physical bullying in secondary. They begin to live a lot longer electronic lives, and that tends to become a little bit more prevalent in our secondary students. So it's good data for us to look at. There's sometimes gaps between what the students and the parents feel around electronic bullying, and that data is interesting to have discussions around at the school level. So why is there that perceived gap? What can we do to work with parents and students around that and make sure that everybody is cyber safe? But really, we still need to predominantly focus on that social architecture at the school, and also reducing verbal bullying, because that's the #1 form that we see expressed year in and year out. Some interesting new data from parents that we're sharing in our infographic. 90% of our students feel that staff encourage their students, which is a nice number, but it's not 100%. 80% of the staff feel that our staff are proud of their students' work and demonstrate that. 78% of our staff, or 78% of our parents feel that the staff know their child very well. Again, it's some data to think about as a system level and how can we improve that. But here's the one we definitely know we need to do some work on, and we're doing that in various forms and ways. Student voice. We know our students feel that they want more voice, particularly our secondary students, in a number of things. But even across the board, elementary and secondary, parents feel that their student voice isn't being heard that much. We only have 41% say that their students feel like they have a voice in their own education. So that's something we need to work on. So what are our next steps? Well, we've been doing a lot of this work, and we combine with other departments. We're continuing focusing on mattering and belonging, trying to dig down deeper. We had, as I mentioned, an expert in talking to our Safe and Accepting School teams last year, Dr. Flett from York University. We're working and supporting all the work that's being done around CRRP. Some of you may have noticed our character education promotions that we're doing this year, going back and we refreshed that, and it brings in those traits of empathy and kindness and community building, which are so important, because we know bullying is a relationship issue. That sense of belonging and sense of mattering is tied to community, so those things are important. We know we need to work on improving student input and voice, and we've been working very hard with some of our strategies at improving student voice, particularly around bullying issues from our department, but also using the CRRP tool that you see up there and trying to engage students and parents in conversations of how that can be done at the school level. We're continuing to focus on that verbal and social bullying, as I mentioned, and all those things that build community that we've done, and we feel we do a good job, but we know we can't let our foot off the gas pedal, so to speak, on a restorative practice, progressive discipline, our student voice conferences. We just continue to need to do that work. We are looking at, since the survey happens every 2 years, Chris and his team have developed sort of mini data sets for schools to make measurements at any point in time during the school year, so schools can get a snapshot of the interventions that they're doing. Are they making a difference? And we continue to nurture our partnership with PrevNet, which is an organization of researchers across Canada that look into relationships and bullying and violence prevention, and we have a very good relationship with them. Their experts come to us. We've been asked to speak at their conference a number of times, and we continue to partner with them, and it's a very valuable partnership. I'm going to turn it over or back to Superintendent Davis for any questions that you might have.
So finally, understanding who we serve and planning what we do to support our students, staff, and community, that is the focus of our data. So that concludes our report, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you. It's great to see some of the new data from some of the new questions. But I'm missing the longitudinal data, because we used to get at least the comparison, and we're not getting that. And it kind of bothers me, because as a whole, yes, it's important for the school, but it also gives us as a whole as, is the board doing something? So the longitudinal data for some of those questions is really key, and I wouldn't mind getting at least a comparison from last year. And then the second thing is, did we break up the parent results between elementary and secondary? Because it would be interesting just to see, especially around the voice of the child, how it was felt.
Through you, Chair. The dashboard has all of the information broken out both by the elementary and panel, as well as the different surveys, so there's comparison across and between. So that does exist. That's available at the school, through the schools. In terms of longitudinal, our focus has been on the dashboard, so a number of the questions are brand new, so there's no longitudinal, but for those that we're working on some supplemental resources that will give that longitudinal view. Our focus was on getting the information out to the schools to be able to start using that with their planning, but supplemental resources are in development.
Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you. I completely admire this kind of work, and Officer McNaughton, I like the fact that you recognize that we need some areas that require attention. For instance, that 66% of the students who feel that they don't really matter at school. We have to make improvements there. And for those 41% of the parents who tell us that they feel their children don't have a voice, we need to provide attention there as well. At the very beginning, you said student well-being is fundamental. I completely agree, but I also want to add that our staff well-being is also very important. For student well-being, we need to have staff well-being. It is a priority. I also want to mention that a few years ago, we developed a mental health advisory committee. And that committee, I felt, was really important because we had staff members, but we also had community members who met with us as well. And I want to say that I hope that that is still a priority, even though we haven't had a meeting this year. I am hopeful that we're going to get back on track with that.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. In our well-being, just the first point, in our well-being priority and our well-being strategic plan, we have a plan that specifically equips students, staff, community, and administration. So our plan is broken down into the categories. The data here is around students and some community members, but absolutely in our strategic plan, we're addressing that. And just to respond to the advisory, yes, we did have to rebook and rejig, but it's still, yes, it's still up and running. Mm-hmm.
Trustee Crawford?
Oh, thank you for the report, and I appreciate how much work goes into it. And I hope I'm not going to be accused of saying the glass is 14% empty instead of 86% full, because I'm very interested in the safety aspect of it. I think we need to know why the students feel the way they do, if they feel unsafe. And in the past, when I've asked about putting something in the report so that they could respond directly, and there was some reason that we didn't want to do that. And can I ask, is that something that we should be doing? And if we're not, why not?
Through you, Mr. Chair. At the school level, there are a number of anecdotal comments that the students have an opportunity to anonymously write down more information that the school team gets to see, but that's not something that is shared beyond the school level. But that part of the data set can give schools an idea at what really is concerning students in terms of specifics. So that data is used and read by the school teams in terms of how they move forward at addressing some of those individual concerns.
And are they showing up as being consistent, like from school to school? Is it the same thing? Because they're obviously sharing this information with the headquarters people as well to make decisions on. So is it fairly consistent as to what the 14% is feeling unsafe about?
The data that we showed there in terms of the forms of bullying is consistent, but we know that bullying is a complex relationship issue, and it's very contextual, Paul. So Trustee Crawford, it's very contextual. So because relationships are difficult to maneuver, there's no real one item you can say is the cause of this or that, but we do know that we need to solve relationship issues with relationship solutions. And that comes from research from PrevNet and all the experts that are working on bullying across the world.
So the point is we do know what the problems are and we are addressing them. Yes? We do know what the problems are because we're getting the feedback and we are.
They're relationship based. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Trustee Lundquist?
Thank you. I actually wanted to say thank you. So the last time I looked at this material, I actually asked about, do students feel like they matter? And I'm delighted that we asked the question because this kind of confirms something that I feared, which is there are many students who are in the system that don't feel like they matter. And I think what is really important about that is if you don't matter, if you don't feel connected, that has a profound effect on mental health and well-being. And so I'm hopeful, and I'm not going to be negative in any way about this because I recognize, although there's room to grow here, and I look forward to hearing about the next steps, I think that we're asking better questions. And I think when we ask better questions, we're going to develop better solutions to some of these concerns. So thank you all for being responsive to the issues we raised in terms of understanding how our students are doing, how they are feeling in the system. And I take Carolyn's point that that is a question that we should be asking of everybody within the system from the top all the way through. And so I hope that we will make certain that we do that. I think that I just want to be clear about this. I thought was an interesting bit of data, which is 41% feel like their child does. So I'm going to flip that, and I used to be good at math, and suddenly I can't add. So 59% don't feel their child has a voice in their education. That's alarming, actually, right? Like that is a significant number, and so I'm wondering if we have a plan to get more data about that, about what that means to them and how they feel that their students could have a voice in that. That number just, it's pretty glaring when you look at all of these numbers. It is an outlier for sure. And so I'm just wondering if we have already developed a plan for that, or if that's something in the near future that's coming.
Thank you, Trustee Lundquist. We have recognized, and through you, Mr. Chair, we've recognized that voice is something that we need to focus on. And so what we have looked at in terms of the processes that schools go through, we look at all of the processes. And we look at where does the student consultation piece come in? Where is their voice in terms of their success criteria, their learning goals in the academic and achievement part? Where's their voice in terms of leadership in the schools? So we're working with the schools in terms of where the student voice comes in having a voice in their education, because we do recognize through not just this data, but data in other areas, that's a need. We also go to our student trustees and we go to our leadership groups to get a lot of information around that. And one of the pieces that we do in our department is we have focus groups so that we can get some information from the students from different areas, not just our leadership group, and we're using that information to plan forward.
Great. I just have a follow-up on that. I think one of the things that has always worried me about education is that we're good at getting responses from people like Sally, student trustees, right? Their voices are firm and strong and very useful in that way. I'm actually worried about that middle group of kids, that group that float through the system because there's not a problem and there's not extraordinary success yet. Not to say it isn't coming, but not yet. So there's a huge group of kids that float quietly through the system, and I think that that's what I'm interested in hearing, because I hear a lot about both of the other ends and not about the middle. So I'm hopeful that you will consider that in trying to get information from all of the kids, because I do worry that it is a silent majority that gets lost.
If I could respond to that, Mr. Chair, through you. One of the reasons that we look at the data at a school is because we can dig down a little bit deeper at the school level to find those trends and patterns and then get to that. That's one of the pieces that we're looking at in terms of our team. So thank you for bringing that forward.
Go ahead, Ken.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to add to that the survey, we already know we're going to ask some questions based on the data we got this year. As we drill deeper and have a better understanding of mattering, we're getting more questions that we can ask to try and drill down on what that means. So the next iteration of the survey will be a little bit different. We'll have a few new questions on there so it can enhance our understanding. So,
thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Seeing no further questions or comments, we'll move on to the 2019 Director's Annual Report, and I'll turn that over to Associate Director Marsh.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the absence of our director. She unfortunately is ill, fighting pneumonia at home, and so I'm here on her behalf, and very proud and humbled, frankly, to present to you the Director's Annual Report. It is an administrative report that begins on page 101 of your packages, and it reflects, I believe, both the commitment and outcomes of the staff and the greater community to achieving our strategic plan, Ignite Learning. It includes our operational action plans and provides visible support of how we have achieved key accomplishments under the 6 pillars of our strategic plan. Following this meeting, it will be made available to every staff member through email and provided electronically through social media channels for our community. It is interactive when it's online, so we certainly do encourage people to access it through the online portal from the point of view of going deeper into the significant work that has occurred during this annual report. I want to emphasize that the results found here are a collective result of the significant work that so many staff members and community members have undertaken on behalf of the students that we serve and the greater community. And I know that Director Miller is deeply regretful that she isn't here to present this significant body of work to you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Associate Director Marsh, for bringing that on behalf of Director Miller. At this time, could I have someone move receipt of the Director's annual report? Trustee Barnes, Trustee Noble, all in favor? Thank you. Then move on to the report from the Committee of the Whole in camera. I'll turn that over to Trustee Lundquist.
Thank you. The board approved the actions of the Committee of the Whole in camera and discussed the security of property of the board, the disclosure of intimate personal or financial information in respect of a member of the board, an employee or prospective employee, pupil or parent, the acquisition or disposal of a school site, decisions in respect of negotiations with employees of the board, litigation affecting the board, and particularly administrative transfer and placement, personnel issues, property matters, employee relations. There were no declarations of interest from the Committee of the Whole. I would ask the Associate Director of Academic to bring forward information regarding the administrative transfers and promotions.
Thank you, and again, through you, Chair, we did discuss the VP transfer given there was a retirement in the system and needed to fill a spot. The individuals who are directly impacted will be notified this evening of the move, and tomorrow morning, principals will have an opportunity to discuss the changes in the impacted schools, and it will then be made public at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon as far as the vice principal transfer results. Thank you.
Thank you, Associate Director Marsh. Chair Berney, that is my report.
Thank you, Trustee Lundquist. So you would move that report. Could I have someone second that? Trustee Templeton, all in favor? Thank you. And then move on to Director's News from the System. This time with Lisa being away with pneumonia, it is pre-recorded, and she'd like to say that definitely for tonight's Director's good news, which we all know, that we all look forward to as a highlight of our monthly board meetings. Given that Director Miller has sent her regrets, our communications department has prepared this month's PowerPoint summary in close collaboration with her. Without further ado, here's Director Miller's good news from the system for the last month and slightly beyond.
Good evening, trustees. On behalf of Director Miller, we are happy to bring you good news from across the system. Lights, camera, action. At the end of November, over 400 DDSB and Durham Catholic District School Board students attended the Film and Television Industry Career Fair. Organized by OYAP facilitator Denise Sturton, this career fair introduced students to a variety of pathways, including acting, directing, set construction, and much more. Students also learned about film and TV opportunities in Toronto and in Durham region. DDSB and Habitat for Humanity Durham recently teamed up to build homes for families in Oshawa. Students in the Specialist High Skills Major and Construction Technology programs from Durham Alternative School, Dunbarton High School, O'Neill CVI, Pickering High School, and Port Perry High School participated in the initiative. Great job, everyone. In recognition of Bullying Awareness and Prevention Week, grade 5 to 8 students got together to brainstorm innovative and engaging ways to promote the DDSB character traits in their schools. Superintendent Georgette Davis also shared some insightful words, telling the assembled students, "Everything in life is a lesson. Sometimes you win and sometimes you learn." At the beginning of December, Core French and French Immersion students gathered at the Education Center for the Franconection Conference, organized by facilitators Sarah Mitchell and Shannon Wood from the French as a Second Language team. Students learned about the many opportunities available when bilingualism is continued through secondary school and beyond. The Poverty Strategy Department worked with Ontario Power Generation, who donated $3,000 from their annual staff giving campaign and arranged to have local Rotary clubs match their donation for a total of $6,000. All of the funds went towards breakfast and snack nutrition programs at Fairport Beach Public School and Bolton C. Fallby Public School. OPG and Rotary staff volunteered for 1 day at each location, cooking and serving students breakfast. Trustee Edwards was also at Bolton C. Falby Public School, lending a helping hand. Geo Roberts CVI hosted the first ever TEDx Oshawa Ed in November. The planning committee was led by Geo Roberts Vice Principal Basil Brumariotis and Principal Allison Evanoff, along with J. Clark Richardson Collegiate Vice Principal Carla Torrente. Approximately 100 attendees heard from 6 dynamic speakers who explored the theme of intersections of equity, technology, and the future of education. Teachers Karen Whiteman and Lily Coronado from Eastdale CVI managed to secure a spot on Health Canada's Consider the Consequences of Vaping National Awareness Tour. Approximately 300 students participated in the interactive tour, learning about the harms and risks associated with vaping. We are pleased to announce that we received Ministry of Education approval to proceed with the construction of a one-room childcare retrofit at Roland Michener Public School in Ajax. The retrofit provides a variety of childcare options for children up to 12 years of age. Programs like these in DDSB schools make it convenient for parents and guardians to find reliable childcare and provide a huge benefit for long-term student success. Our DDSB science and math facilitators collaborated to support a day of coding on December 10th at Dumbarton High School. Over 170 grade 7 students learned to use microbits during an introduction to coding. This was in conjunction with the Hour of Code and Computer Science Week. Our facilitator team is also working together with our science teachers to plan the STEM Summit, which will happen in the spring. During the first full week of 2020, the Technological Education team hosted the annual Tech Ed Symposium. Secondary students baked up a storm, deconstructed motors, learned to braid with Durham Hairstylist Academy, and much more. Trustee Thatcher was also on site to witness the amazing student creations. Kindergarten registration has begun for the 2020-2021 school year. Our Early Years Department is leading the registration process for families with children in junior and senior kindergarten. Over the next several months, parents and guardians are invited to register their children online for enrollment in a DDSB elementary school. Our elementary schools have proudly wrapped up their intermediate and junior volleyball seasons. 2 great seasons have showcased the amazing sportsmanship and talent of our DDSB students. Over 70 teams had the opportunity to play in a cricket tournament at the Whitby Soccer Dome, a first-time sport for many students. Schools are now gearing up for 3 elementary curling bonspiels and the basketball season. DDSB school communities helped others in need this past holiday. Brooklyn High School donated food, toys, and gift cards to the Simcoe Hall Settlement House. Clara Hughes Public School gave gift boxes to Canadian soldiers. Carruthers Creek Public School gathered food items for Horizon House, and Pickering High School donated toys to CTV's Toy Mountain. These are just a few inspiring examples of our students' generosity this year. Coronation Public School paid tribute to Mary Hasek, who celebrated 45 years of teaching. They surprised her with a luncheon where she was presented with a gift, flowers, and certificates. We also want to recognize educational assistant Carrie Muller from Cartwright Central Public School. She wrote her first children's book, Matilda and Her Magic Mat, Yoga for Everybody. Scott Central Public School's junior choir made the top 10 in the 2019 CBC Canadian Music Class Challenge Division. Choir members consisted of students from grades 4 to 8 who met weekly to practice their rendition of Shine a Light. There were an estimated 50,000 students and close to 1,200 music classes from across Canada entered in this competition. Well done, Scott Central. This past week, our leadership team held an external principal and vice principal recruitment night. Associate Director Nora Marsh and Leadership Officer Michelle McDonald guided educators through the process of becoming an administrator in the DDSB. A panel of new principal and vice principal recruits to the DDSB shared their experiences and insights with eager attendees. November 20th was Educational Assistance Appreciation Day. In recognition of this, we created a video to show how much our school communities value and benefit from our amazing, dedicated EAs. Let's take a look at a clip from the video.
Educational assistants are the backbone of what we do each and every day in our schools. So an EA, they provide support for our teachers. EAs do programming. EAs come in and they do a lot of the hard work. They are behind the scenes working with kids, making sure that they're emotionally well, their well-being is taken care of.
And I think that they are incredibly valuable to a student who has difficulty getting through a day, whether that's emotionally or physically or academically. They do a lot to move a student from A to B when that student couldn't move from A to B on their own without them.
So as an EA, we support every part of our students' day, from the second they get on the bus, through academic periods, through gym, through lunchtime. So we're there to help them with all the little things.
But our job is to work to ensure safety, to ensure success for the students that need that extra support.
Once again, that is just a snippet to recognize the great work of our EAs. To watch the full video, please go to our DDSB YouTube channel. On behalf of Director Miller, thank you, trustees. That is her report. The dates of significance, as you can see, take us up to the end of February 2020.
Perfect, thank you. We now move on to recommended actions. 14A, turned over to Trustee Lundquist on the Standing Committee meeting from January 6, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report of the Durham District School Board Standing Committee public session meeting minutes are of January 6, 2020 are found at page 103 to 108, and I move for adoption of the report.
Thank you. Seeing Trustee Lundquist moving this, could I have a seconder for that? Trustee Noble, all in favor? Great, thank you. We then go on to 14B, report of SEAC meeting November 21st, 2019. Trustee Donna Edwards.
The actual minutes for the meeting of November 21st, 2019 can be found on pages 110 to 123, and that is my report. However, I do have a motion from our December 19th meeting that also needs to be addressed. So if we just, my report, approval of my report, and then we'll go to the motion.
So let's move your report first. Trustee Edwards, you move that. Have someone second it. Trustee Barnes, all in favor? We'll then move on to your motion.
Okay, the motion can be found on page 109, which basically is recommending that Kelly Kennedy will be the SEAC alternate for the Ontario Association for Families of Children with Communication Disorders.
And second,
move that.
Seconded by Trustee Forbes. All in favor? Perfect, that carries. Then move on to 14C, 2019-2020 interim financial report. I'll turn that over to Associate Director Marsh.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. You can find this report beginning on folio 124 of your package, and I'm thrilled to be introducing to you a new member of the Durham District School Board team, currently Nick Bobrow, who is our comptroller, and he's going to walk you through the content of this report. Thank you.
Thanks. Contained within the package on pages 124 to 136 is the 2019-2020 interim financial report. This report is provided to update the enrollment information as of the count date of August 31st, 2019, and also the operating expenditures up to and including the first quarter ending November 30th, 2019. We also, in addition to updating the enrollments, we also updated the retirements and also the qualifications and experiences. As a result, revenue increased by $800,000 and expenditures also increased by an equivalent amount of $800,000. All of the details are included in the report and have been provided for review. So that ends my report.
Trustee Forbes, would you like to move that interim financial report? Sure, great. Have a seconder for that? Trustee Noble, all in favor? And welcome aboard, Nick. Great to have you here.
Thanks.
Then move on to D, C.E. Broughton, P, Public School Modified Calendar Year, and Superintendent Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, the report can be found on pages 137 to 173. The purpose of this report is to seek trustee approval to collapse C.E. Broughton Public Schools Modified Calendar Year. The modified calendar year, also referred to as a balanced school year, is a rearrangement of the traditional school calendar. Included in this report is the consultation process timelines and data regarding school trends of the program and a summary of the community input. Board staff presented the next steps in this process to trustees on November 4th. This began the consultation process. The purpose of the consultation process was to receive feedback from parents, guardians, and community members. We will be presenting the information this evening for trustee decision. Durham District School Board is committed to fostering success and independence for each student through a team approach. No matter which program they attend, students with special education strengths and needs are supported in inclusive environments that enable them to develop their potential. All students are supported in these environments. Specific strategies regarding the mental health and anxiety needs of our students are based on unique student need and individualized based on collaborative support plans, regardless of whether the student is in a modified program or a regular program. Our priority is to be responsive, relevant, and intentional to unique needs of the student when they need it and as they need it. As outlined in the report, the modified calendar year has 6 staff for the current 2019 to 2020 school year. The classes are smaller than the board average size, and based on Durham District School Board average size moving forward, C. Broughton would be staffed at Durham District School Board class averages. This means it would consist of an average of 4 staff with the possibility of multiple grades. While multiple grade classes can be viable, they do present unique challenges in relation to the delivery of the educational program and social opportunities for our students. I would like to introduce our Manager of Property and Planning, Carrie Trombino, and I would like to thank our facilities team that is here as well. Carrie will give us a brief outline of the process and findings for you.
Thank you, Superintendent Davis. C.E. Broughton Public School opened in 1999 with 552 students. The enrollment has been in general decline since 2003. Planning staff began tracking and recording the 2 calendar years enrollment as of 2009, and as outlined on page 139, section 3.3.1, table 1, the modified calendar years enrollment has been in decline, whereas the regular calendar year enrollment has remained at about 150 students. As outlined in Table 2, the modified calendar year enrollment with 103 students as of September 2019 has more than 1 grade with a total of 6 students, as well as grades with a total of 7 or 8 students. The projected enrollment for C.E. Broughton Public Schools modified calendar year identifies the continuation of declining enrollment. As outlined on page 142 of your package, a community consultation process commenced based on board regulations, school boundaries. An open house was held the evening of November 13th, 2019, from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. in the C.E. Broughton Public Schools gymnasium. Information was provided at the open house, and the community could ask staff questions informally. Comment sheets were provided at the open house as well. There was a dedicated email and voicemail line for community feedback, and that was available, all those 3 forms of feedback. Comments could be provided until November 27th, 2019. Input was received from various groups, including CE Broughton Public School families, CE Broughton Public School staff, other Durham District School Board families, and others or unknown, and those totals are provided in Table 6. That included, from those groups, we received a total of 34 emails and 5 comment sheets. In total, 39% of CE Broughton Public School modified calendar families provided some form of input into this consultation process. A summary of all the input is provided in Table 7 through Table 9. The input included a summary of the concerns or community input on the benefits of the modified calendar year. Table 8 outlined community input on the enrollment projections, and Table 9 outlined other community input. Staff has provided a complete analysis of all community input found in Section 4.2.1, and that analysis is found on page 146 through 151 of your report. Staff's recommendation for trustees' consideration can be found on page 153, Section 9.
This concludes the report at this time, and we're happy to respond to any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you. I'll turn this over to Trustee Lundquist.
Thank you. This has been a tough one in a lot of ways, and I know that staff feel that too, and I know certainly parents feel that, and I appreciate that your summary is of the feedback you receive, but we also receive feedback. And I just want to observe that Trustee Thatcher isn't here tonight, and I observe that because she did a significant amount of work in compiling our views and our thoughts and having discussions with the other trustees from Whitby in particular. And I think it's only fair to acknowledge the work that she did with respect to that. So first, I think what I want to do is say thank you to staff and to parents and to, I see one of the parents here who has already presented to us, and I appreciate the level of engagement on this issue. So I'm just going to speak from a common sense perspective, what I think is a common sense perspective at least. So I spent a lot of time really reflecting on this, and I read dozens of emails from parents, and I spoke to them at the open house, and I spoke to several groups of kids and individual kids about their love of their school, and I'm sure I heard things that most kids would say about their schools. I have listened very carefully to the presentations that have been made at this board by parents, and I have very carefully analyzed this report that staff has provided to us, and I do appreciate the work that went into it. I've also engaged in quite a significant number of hours of research myself because I'm really struck by the passion and commitment that parents have to this program. And I recognize that parents are always committed to their schools, and when there are changes, they're likely to respond. But this, to me, to me at least at this stage, was unique. So I did all of those things, and having done so, I have to say that I can't actually conclude that the attendance in the program necessarily correlates with improved academic outcomes. That was absolutely not what I found necessarily. It could, but doesn't always. But what was interesting is that even though there is no sort of dispositive conclusion about that, there were things that I heard that I find really compelling. So I'm actually far less willing to concede the issue of positive impacts of such a program on mental health and well-being. I am not prepared to discount all of the anecdotal evidence we heard from parents who attested to the positive effects that this program had on their children's mental health and their capacity to operate on a day-to-day basis. And I say that while I'm very aware of the ever-increasing rates of mental unwellness in kids and mental illness as well. every single parent I spoke to said they saw noticeable differences in their children. They talked about how this program made a noticeable difference in the lives of their children, and we know that there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to education. That doesn't work. And I recognize that we are going to be under increasing fiscal pressure over the course of the coming years. And yet, I feel that there were things that were said that I cannot discount. So I accept that this program has not been well promoted. I am not aware, I was not aware personally of its existence at all. And that might be my own limitation, but I anticipate that there are many other parents who have those same limited views. I think the fact that there's an article published once a year in a newspaper that many of us don't actually read or ever see, it isn't adequate in terms of promoting this program. So I actually find it would be, in my view, a grave disservice to actually end this program now without giving it a chance to see if it can succeed. I don't see that as fair, and I don't see that as genuine consultation. I feel really strongly about this program and the way that we have managed it, because I feel like we haven't given it a fair chance to succeed. And will it succeed? I do not know. I don't know if it can. I don't know if there's interest across the board that will support it. But I could not vote for it to collapse in the circumstances, because I feel that it would be irresponsible. I feel like these parents have committed to this program over the long term, and we haven't supported the program in the way that we perhaps could. So I'm aware of the declining enrollment, and I'm aware that it may not be salvageable, but I think it's premature to axe the program at this stage. I think that would be an extraordinary thing to do, in fact, because we've put so little effort into growing this program, to seeing if it could flourish. So I'm going to very respectfully ask the board to consider the following motion. I would like to move that the board continue operation of the modified calendar year program at CE Broughton for the for the 2020-2021 and 2021-2022 school years, and that it take every reasonable step, and I say reasonable, recognizing that we have financial constraints too, but reasonable steps were referenced to us and are referenced in the report. So every reasonable step to ensure that the DDSB community be made aware of the program and have the opportunity to access it if they so choose. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Templeton.
Yes, I was going to echo pretty much everything that Nikki, Trustee Lundquist mentioned there. I just want to throw in something personal. In 1999, it was all the rage about the modified. It was in the newspapers. It was being talked about. There was, there was a lot of people that didn't want it to exist. There was a lot of people that wanted it to exist. And my daughter took the course. My daughter went into modified. And these are her words. She said, being enrolled in the modified program at CE Broughton gave her longer breaks throughout the year. These breaks offered her much more needed periods to spend time with friends, family, and to simply regenerate after months of working hard. She believes the breaks were spaced out evenly and prevented burnout, which in turn helped her focus better in school when she was there. She remembers looking forward to the breaks throughout the year. It gave her something to look forward to while she was struggling. As most some are aware, my daughter, she suffers from suicidal tendencies and she's bipolar. And her final line in this was, it had such a positive effect on her mental health and well-being. And just for this reason alone, I can't support closing the school.
So you'd be seconding the motion?
And I'm seconding the motion.
Okay. Discussion to that, Trustee Forbes?
Thank you. And I too have been struck, and I feel I share many of the, the sentiments that were shared by Trustees Lundquist and Templeton. I wish I had known about the program. I did not. And things may have been different. Who knows? But I do agree we are balancing fiscal concerns, very real fiscal concerns, and 45% almost of the students in this school are in grades 6, 7, and 8. So I would absolutely, and I don't know if it would be possible to do a 3-year extension, but 2 is definitely something that I could see supporting. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Barnes?
I realize this is an emotional topic. I understand in looking at the data that there might be ways that we could have done more in regards to promoting the program. And I'm going to go opposite to where you were going to go. I think that based on the numbers in the program presently, I would look for an extension of 1 year. For the viability of the program, when you're looking at 6 students in a class, 8 students in a class, I think it might be valuable to look at it in a year to see if it is sustainable, because I don't know if it would be with the numbers that we have. So if we've done every effort that we can to promote and we don't get the buy-in, I don't know if fiscally we can support a program where we're running an average of 6 students per class. So I just wanted to speak to that.
Seeing no further comments to the motion, Trustee Edwards?
And I guess at this point in time, because we have a motion on the table, you haven't made an amendment, Trustee Barnes, but to the motion. So that's basically what would happen. But I agree with Trustee Barnes' comments in that, especially with the climate as it is, and that we're currently still negotiating what class sizes are and the impact that it may have fiscally. I agree with all the comments that you said, Trustee Lundquist, that we have to give it a thing, but I really believe that 1 year is about we can go, and collecting the data. So we have this year's sort of data and next year's data, and collecting that information to see, and ensure that we have put in processes to promote the program and so forth, and see what happens from that perspective. So I guess from that perspective, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion to be 1 year.
Do you have a seconder for that amendment? Trustee Barnes? Could we take a vote on that then? So
Any discussion on that?
Any discussion on that? Trustee Krupp, do you want to speak to that?
Sort of changes is that we have something different on the table now, because I support that, and I was going to say that do not vote this down because it has a 2-year stipulation in it. Modify it first. In other words, I'd hate for it to lose because of that. So to deal with the amendment, maybe we should do that, and then I'll make some other comments once that goes by.
turn this over to Associate Director Marsh, who has some information before we vote on that amendment.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just in the interest of transparency, so we do have very small class enrollment per grade, and certainly we recognize that that does provide certain limitations as far as social opportunities and class organization, and that was identified by Superintendent Davis and the team within the report. But I also want to be transparent that what we would need to look at then from a financial fiscal responsibility perspective is then combining multiple grades, and while stacked grades are common in schools as far as making class caps work, we would potentially be looking at triple grades then in a class to make this work. So the expenditure wouldn't be that it would be one class at 6. We would be looking, just in the interest of transparency, to make sure that that was clear. But there is definitely an added on expense from the point of view of the additional administration, because we do have to staff the school at a higher rate as far as the administration to ensure that there is supervision throughout the modified calendar in addition to the other calendar that's running in the school. So I just wanted to make sure that was transparent and not silent on that.
Thank you, Associate Director Marsh. Did you want to speak to the amendment, Paul? No. No, okay. So you just, Trustee Barnes?
Thank you. Thank you, Associate Director. That was also one of the concerns, is having 3 levels of class in one class when you're looking at programming, and why I would look at the 1-year program rather than a 2 or 3 year, because if you're looking at combining JK, SK in grade 1, or if you have to go and combine 2, 3, and 4, I think there is some challenges when you start getting into triple grade combinations. Thank you.
Oh, Trustee Lundquist.
Thank you. I appreciate the amendment, and I appreciate the direction of Associate Director Marsh. I understood that. I read the report. And I recognize that stacked classrooms in that way are not ideal, but they can function. I know that because my child was in one last year of 6, 7, 8 and flourished. So I acknowledge that it is far from ideal. But I also think that it's now February, and if we're, well, it's almost February, it's January. If we're fairly going to give it a shot, then that gives 6 months, really, before 6, 7, 8 months, I guess, before students have to register in the new year. And to me, I feel like in light of the time it's going to take to build awareness of the program, I'm not sure that that's fair to do in that time frame. I appreciate the amendment, and if I must live with it, I will do so. But I stand behind the position that 2 years is a fairer period in which to assess whether it is something that can be salvaged or not. Thank you.
So that being said, taking vote on the amendment of 1 year. So it was moved by Trustee Edwards, seconded by Trustee Barnes. All in favor? 2. Okay, that doesn't carry then. So we're going back to the original motion. Any other speakers to the Trustee Crawford?
Yes, I was struck by, well, I have to compliment staff on their methods of consultation and how they document everything so well. So I read all through them, and I guess my question would be, was there anybody that was in favor of collapsing the program? And I can answer my own question, there wasn't. And the quality of the people that are opposed to collapsing it, their reasoning was so well put. And I really like the idea that if we advertised this properly, promoted it properly, it would be successful. And I strongly recommend that we do that, regardless of the outcome of tonight. My next question is procedural. If this fails, Mr. Chair, do we go back to the original recommendation to deal with?
Yes. Yes, Trustee Crawford is correct.
Thank you.
So that being said, let's deal with the original motion. Trustee Lundquist moved and seconded by Trustee Tick. Could you read it out again, Trustee Lundquist, before we take a vote, just so that it's clear for everybody?
I can try. I think it was, I move that the board continue operation of the modified calendar year program at CE Broughton for the 2020 to 2021, 2021-2022 school years, and that the board immediately take every reasonable step to ensure that the DDSB community be made aware of the program so that they may access it.
So seconded by Trustee Templeton. All in favor? You can hit that a bit quicker, Trustee Edwards, just so I can see that before we do that. Thank you. Go ahead.
Just a comment that somewhere in there I would recommend that there be a review because it isn't necessarily stated in there, but a review and a report back to see if we continue the program.
Any other comments or discussion to the original motion? That being said, go ahead, take a vote. Is all in favor?
I'm going to, sorry, may I?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So I accept that Trustee Don Edwards' position makes absolute sense. I don't think that the review should wait until the end of 2 years. So I think I would like to amend the motion so it reads, I move that the board continue operation of the modified calendar year program at CE Broughton for the 2020, 2021, and 2021-2022 school years, and that the board immediately take every reasonable step to ensure that the DDSB community be made aware of the program so that they may access it, and that the board undertake a review of the program following fall registration in 2020.
Trustee Templeton, would you like to second that amendment? Okay, speakers to that amendment. Trustee Crawford, did you want to speak to that? Or?
I just wanted to be clear that the review is what the date of the review was.
So I said following fall enrollment, so when the I took that to mean when the final numbers for fall enrollment are, and perhaps Associate Director Marsh can help me in this regard in terms of what I might call that appropriately.
As to a date.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Associate Director Marsh.
So through you, Chair, I might suggest that the motion read that that you direct staff to undertake a review of of efforts made as far as promotion of the program and a review of enrollment stats as a result. In the fall of 2020.
Okay, so just bear with me because I'm trying to write it down so that it reads sensibly, and it certainly doesn't at this stage. Okay, so I'm going to try this one last time. I move that the board continue operation of the modified calendar year program at CE Broughton for the 2020-2021 and 2021-2022 school years, and that the board immediately take every reasonable step to ensure that the DDSB community be made aware of the program so that they may access it. And further, that staff be directed to review enrollment statistics in the fall of 2020 and report back on efforts to increase enrollment and the effect of those efforts.
Seconded by Trustee Templeton. Trustee Morton, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, I'm just curious, wondering, could we have a review in the September of 2020? And do we need a second review then in September 2021?
Sure.
I would think that we do.
Associate Director Marsh.
So if we added a review on, I guess my question would be, would we anticipate a different outcome as far as the community involvement? But I also understand this is a significant decision, so I wonder if when we bring the report back in the fall of 2020, the board could then consider its next steps in relation to how it wants to communicate and seek input from the community.
So we leave the motion as is then?
Any other questions or comments? Anybody like to add to that? Okay, seeing none, we'll take a vote. So moved by Trustee Lundquist, seconded by Trustee Templeton. All in favor? That carries. Okay, thank you. We'll then move on to Coronation Public School and RH Cornish Public School Gifted Program Boundary. Superintendents Mundy and Mihaela.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Brainy. The reports can be found on page 174 to 183 on the gifted program boundary recommendation. Carrie Trombino, Manager of Property and Planning, will share information on the process and recommendation.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to seek trustee approval to adjust the gifted program boundary of Coronation Public School and RH Cornish Public School effective September 2020. A report was presented to trustees on October 21st, 2019 to commence the community consultation process following board regulation school boundaries. A map provided as Appendix B, found on page 180, outlines the recommended boundary change. As outlined in Table 1, the area under review is transported north to a Scugog school for all programs in both the elementary and secondary panel, with the exception of the gifted program, which is currently designated to Coronation Public School in Oshawa. In May 2019, a temporary gifted program, dual zoning, was established to allow families in the area to attend either Coronation Public School or RH Cornish Public School with transportation. And this was until such time as a full consultation process could commence in the fall of 2019. Following the school boundaries regulations, staff discussed the proposal with trustees and had SCC executive meetings. An open house was held the evening of November 19th, 2019 from 7 p.m. until 8:30 p.m. at RH Cornish Public School, and the community was invited to provide feedback through the community sheets, emails, and voicemail until December 3rd, 2019. Through this consultation process, no parents, community members, or stakeholders attended the open house or provided any comments or feedback. As of September 2019, there was one student attending the gifted program from the subject area, and that the subject area is outlined in Appendix D. The student is attending RH Cornish Public School through the dual zoning established in May 2019. The staff recommended boundary allows for transportation efficiencies, as buses serving the area are already heading to Scugog schools. As well, ride times for gifted students would be reduced. The recommendation for staff consideration can be found on page 178 of the report, section 9. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Trustee Morton?
Thank you, and through you. We made the point of saying that no parents attended that public meeting at RH Cornish on November 19th, and I think that was because this is a common sense decision on our part. We would be very foolish to question this decision. Busing in the area does exist, and all of those buses are running north to Prince Albert and to RH Cornish. We offer the gifted program, we offer the French immersion program at RH Cornish, so it makes a lot of sense that I would make this recommendation. So my motion would read that the Durham District School Board approve the gifted program boundary realignment between Cornish Public School and RH Cornish Public School, and it was effective September 2020, will be, as outlined in Appendix A.
Seconder, Trustee Lundquist. Any discussion to that? Seeing none, all in favor? Great. That carries too. Thank you. Our next item is safety motion. Trustee Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion should be in front of everyone. There is a small change to it when we parsed this to make it into 5 different questions. At the end of the first one, that whether or not the Board of Trustees is conforming to policies on safety and handling, we dropped the last part of that sentence, and to complete it, it should read, and the handling of violent incidents within the DDSB. So if you want to mark your copy that. It was brought forward and then it was postponed to this meeting. My main purpose here is to produce some conversation about these 5 points and to have staff produce some responses to them. So I put it forward now as corrected.
Thank you. Any questions or comments regarding Trustee Crowd? Trustee Barnes?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. When we brought this motion forward before, we had talked about taking it into our ad hoc committee and discussing, but we couldn't delay it past a certain amount of time, so we brought it forth to this meeting, and I wanted to then again put it out there that this should probably first be brought into the incident ad hoc committee, sort of sussed out, and then come back to board, and that would be my response to that, my recommendation on that.
I'm sorry, Trustee, I have difficulty
Oh, sorry, I wasn't speaking into the mic. I was looking.
If you're proposing that this should be handled at the upcoming ad hoc meeting, are you suggesting?
Yes.
Okay. I have no objection to that. It would give us an opportunity to have a full-fledged debate because it's a full board committee, and providing that the detail is there for us to debate, that would be okay with me. I would have no objection to it.
So that being said, Trustee Crawford, you're okay with just tabling that so it can be discussed at the
Well, I think we probably have to formally
but are you okay with that?
committed to that. I'm okay with it, yes.
All right. Could I have any other discussion to that? Seeing none, could I have somebody move a motion? So you did, Trustee Barnes, Trustee Edwards. Did you want to second that motion? All in favor? Okay, that carries, and that's what will happen. So thank you. We'll then move on to the Purchasing Regulation 3310 update. Associate Director Marsh.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I want to draw your attention to the report beginning on page 187 of your package. It's a brief on a draft purchasing regulation that we're suggesting streamlining as a result of an internal review that we have completed of our regulations. Primarily, the change is that 4 procedures that were separate before will all be included within one, and that the appendices will detail the separate procedures. Those ones were the school petty cash fund, purchasing card use, check requisition, and business meetings and business travels. So those are now all within this draft regulation incorporated as appendices. You'll also note that there are some changes in relation to spending limits, and that the current status of those limits is consistent with other district school boards as far as spending limitations and the position. This is coming to you as a notice of motion for the February 18th board meeting.
Thank you. Then move on to 14H, Maple Ridge Boundary Review. Trustee Crawford.
Oh, I'm getting a little tired of hearing my own voice. Anyway, this is well prepared, so I will read it verbatim. Deferral of boundary revision involving Maple Ridge, Vaughan Willard. The community and stakeholders are requesting additional time to understand the boundary review process explore all options thoroughly, and engage in more authentic consultation. In my view, I should say our view, we should take the time needed to examine the impact of French immersion offerings in a more robust, strategic, and systemic way by undertaking a district review of our French immersion programs. Such a review would inform future strategic planning and boundaries from a district-wide perspective. We could, as part of that review, seek input from communities, have staff examine trends and lessons learned from other districts, and make recommendations that strive to meet the diverse needs and expectations of our students and their families. The motion, therefore I move that the Maple Ridge Public School Boundary Review be deferred to the 2020-2021 school year, and that, in the meantime, a French immersion district review be undertaken by staff. This process should be initiated by a staff report on the scope of the French immersion review, with a final report to the board in the fall of 2020. Following that, staff would initiate the boundary review with a report to board in February 2021 to be implemented in September of 2021. I move that, and I would request the other trustee from Pickering, Chair Chris Brainy, to second it. Thank you.
I will do that, Trustee Crawford. I'd be happy to second that. Do we have any conversation or discussion to Trustee Crawford's motion? Trustee Edwards?
I fully agree that when it comes to the whole French immersion district review needs to be done. There are similar cases in a variety of other municipalities within the board. So I think I fully support this motion.
Any other questions or comments to Trustee Crawford's motion? Trustee Barnes?
I thought Nikki had her thing on.
It's okay, go ahead.
Okay.
I don't care.
I was just agreeing, actually, so it wasn't that important. But I think it's going forward for strategic planning. I think it is important that we take a look at our French immersion program. We have been sort of reacting rather than planning for it. So I think there's value in just sort of putting the brakes on for a short period of time, reviewing it, and coming out with a more fulsome plan of what that will look like for the entire board rather than just individual school areas.
Thank you, Trustee Lundquist.
Yeah, sorry, I lost a bunch of words, or they all came out at once, or tried to. I think really what I wanted to say about this is that of course, I support the motion. Absolutely, I support it. I think it speaks to a bigger issue of consultation and the manner in which the board consults, and I really appreciate that this gives the community a much better opportunity to have their voices heard in this process, and I hope that that is something that we do in the future on all consultations respecting issues that really impact families in a very significant way. So I really actually do appreciate this, and I will absolutely be voting in favor of it. Thank you.
Seeing no further comments, could we take a vote on Trustee Crawford's motion? I've seconded it. All in favor? Perfect, that carries. Good. So we have information items, 2019-2020 Supplementary Funds Summary. Director Marsh, Associate Director Marsh.
I'm actually going to very gratefully turn it over to the Comptroller.
Thank you. Included on page 206 is a report on the 2019-2020 Supplementary Fund Summary. So this is over and above this. These are the grants that fall outside of the grants for student needs. And So far, the grants that have been announced or received to date total $7,076,152, and that's included as Appendix A for the detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? That's an information item. Then seeing none, we'll move on to 15B, bell time review. Superintendent Mundy.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Brainy. Christine Nanscaville, Chief Facilities Officer, is here to share the information on the bell time review. The report can be found on pages 208 and 209.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. An extensive review of school bell times, along with a board-wide consultation process, occurred in the spring of 2017. And from that review, there were 28 schools where bell times were revised. And in the policy for the board on bell time reviews, by January 15th each year, DSTS and DDSB staff will determine if bell time adjustments are required for the following school year to manage transportation efficiencies. And the bell time procedure also states that adjustments that are 10 minutes or less do not require a public consultation process, but a full communication process is outlined in the procedure. From the review that we had just finished, we are recommending and suggesting, that the bell times for Greenbank and Port Perry High School be adjusted, both within 10 minutes and therefore do not require a public consultation process. But the communication out to the two communities will follow the bell time procedure. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, thank you for bringing forth this report, and I am sure that Superintendent Mundy and Officer Bowman will completely agree with me that hopefully this change of timing, a 5-minute at one school, a 10-minute at another, will alleviate the busing concerns that we have experienced this fall. I fully support this, and I think that we should move on this. So that motion I would put forward.
Thank you. You have a seconder, Trustee Noble? Any conversation, any discussion of that? Seeing none, all in favor? It's an information item, but you put a motion forward. Trustee Morton, are you okay with
I'm
just having it
definitely
go
okay
forward?
with that.
Okay, let's do that then. So that being said, correspondence, we have none, but I do want to mention for anybody that is watching online, Trustee Crawford raised a good point, that there is an information meeting still about the boundary review tomorrow night that will still go forward because we would still like to receive input and suggestions from the community at that time. So we just want to let people know that are watching this online, even though the Maple Ridge boundary review has been deferred, that we will still meet with the community tomorrow night and go ahead with the community meeting. That being said, regarding, we have correspondence with the Canadian Cancer Society, SEAC, Premier of Ontario, which you've all got. In other business, I'd just like to wish all the best wishes to Lamia Saba, who's our OSSTF president, who is moving on to the provincial office. We will certainly miss working with her. It's, as we all know, we have a great relationship with OSSTF, and Lamia's been a joy to work with throughout her time in that role. So we look forward to seeing the great things she'll do in that role, and congratulations. On that note, could I have someone move adjournment? Trustee Barnes, Trustee Crawford, all in favor? Just let everyone know we're still back in camera after this for an item. Thank you.
I'm just going to take that and make sure that she's got the right one.
Yeah, thanks.